Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Hearthstone. Today is Friday, April 19th. We're starting a little late, stayed up a little late last night, finishing up Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2. Terrible game. I'm not sure I even really am going to spend too much time talking about it. We've got a large amount of news because we had some games left over from Wednesday, and we've got just, I guess, some Druid and Hunter victories to try and get. And I'm on my main account questionable as to which of these decks I should play, frankly, when on ranked play. I guess we'll try a Druid game and a Hunter game, playing ranked. If we lose both of those, then we'll lose 2 stars, and then we'll go to casual play. That makes about the most sense. Let's see. Let's get everything set up and ready to start talking about the news. Yeah, Castlevania Lords of Shadow ended kind of rushed. There's clearly in the last quarter of gameplay a considerable amount of unfinished content there. There should have been entire levels that turned into, well, the second acolyte of Satan that you fight. Literally, you go through 2 rooms and then you're in basically the fight with the second acolyte. And then the second acolyte is this human that can shoot lightning like the Emperor from Star Wars at you. And you think, oh, well, that might be an interesting fight, fighting this humanoid person with this magical ability, but then they immediately have you not fight that guy, and instead he infects, controls giant puppets, toy maker puppets, so you're fighting these giant monsters. It seems kind of obvious because the only few places where you do get a one-on-one fight with a humanoid form, you run into this issue of those characters not having enough moves and not really doing anything that is fast-paced. There was no real big twists. In fact, there's a decent amount of explanation, or lack of explanation, is what I meant to say there, in some points that maybe get explained in the $7.99 DLC, but there's no way I'm going to buy that DLC and cover that. That it would have to be on sale, or somebody would have to gift it to me, and even then, because I did not enjoy the experience for the entirety of the first game, why in the world would I want to go back to it? Now, what's weird is we are in this scenario where we're going to talk about it today, even that there's a Castlevania collection that's been announced. If that Castlevania collection comes out on Steam, then I might go from playing the newest Castlevania games in the Lords of Shadow series to the older games that are actually Metroidvania games and actually will be good. But for now, as I move forward, I need to first things first schedule videos, and I hate scheduling videos on YouTube. But after I do that, then I need to work my way towards playing Axiom Verge. I've been sitting on Axiom Verge for quite a while. There's a lot of games that are just on the I want to play it list. I really, really want to play it, and not just I own it and at some point I casually intend to play it. List, which is a lot of games too. Myst 3 Exile started airing on my channel today, so to the surprise of me more than anything else. Because, yeah, you know, I've not been paying a huge amount of attention to what games come out when on my schedule, because I've been taking things more laid back. Yeah, I can't even really wrap my head around what happened in Lords of Shadow 2. It to me feels like it's clearly suffering from a problem of Konami not funding it as part of its problem. But I also would come to the belief that even within whatever budget they were given, they seem to have failed to really recognize that there should have been more. What am I trying to say? More focus on the main gameplay mechanics. Like the fact that the Lords of Shadow 2 has stealth mechanics in it and all, but has a terrible fighting mechanic, and it doesn't have that many enemies. At one point near the end, you start fighting in one boss fight. You fight these small humanoid zombie-like creatures that clearly should have been the first enemy we ever ran into, instead of demon-like creatures, because the demon-like creatures are bigger and stronger. So if I had been grinding and doing large amounts of damage to easy one-hit kill enemies, that would have been really nice. But that's just not the experience they gave us. The open world is a joke in the game. It is totally not open world, full of loading sections, tiny little maps that you can only go through maybe 3 hallways before you're loading into another area. At the end of the game, they want you to go to a specific place, but they don't tell you what a specific place is, so you're supposed to just wander around the entirety of the map, which is a joke. I figured out that if you went to the past, it would immediately tell you where you needed to go, which is what I suspected something would happen if I went back to the past, to the main kind of hub world. And so I went back to the past, and immediately it said you're supposed to go here, and that changed the indicator on the map so that I knew where I was going and what I was doing. But even though I had an indicator at that point, it still had me run around in a circle around the entirety of the future section of the map. There clearly should have been a simpler way, and yet I couldn't find it. So yeah, I would also say Lords of Shadows kills the last Belmont in the future tense, and kind of kills the idea that you could make a 3D platforming adventure game in the Castlevania storyline that was more like a old Castlevania game, because it kind of demands that you continue from the ending in the future timeline. So no more Gothic churches, no more ancient feelings. Almost certainly, if you were going to as Konami try to make new Castlevania games, you'd almost certainly get rid of the Lords of Shadow series and instead base a series off the Netflix anime games, which would be fine, but Konami doesn't care about making video games, so that won't happen. Best case scenario, as for basically any Konami game, would be that Konami goes out of business, goes completely bankrupt, which is kind of hard to do in Japan, and sells all of its licenses and assets to somebody like Nintendo, where Nintendo would then do something with it eventually, at least. To be fair, there is a very good argument to be made about Nintendo products, particularly the Metroid series, not being high priority for Nintendo either. A lot of the Metroid games have been given to third-party developers with little care or concern as to what the quality of that product is, including at least one Metroid game that was made by the same developers as the Lords of Shadows game, Mercury Stream. But at the very least, Nintendo will try to do something. They'll tease it and try to make something more. Konami, as it is, seems like if they just stayed the course for the next 100 years, they would just never make another game of any quality. They probably will just license out the Metal Gear names and the Castlevania games for their pachinko machines and make money in Japan that way. So yeah, just bad business directing in a lot of ways. Let's start talking about the news though, because I've already talked probably more than is necessary for that game. There you go, explosive trap. So Gamatsu has an article here. AI, the Sumner Files official English website, launched screenshots. This is, I think, a little bit more than a visual novel game, if I recall correctly. Let's see. What it was it tagged here as. It's a Spike Chunsoft game. AI to Summoner Files is due out for the PS4, Switch, PC worldwide on July 25th. Read more about the game here, and here. And that's the problem with Gamatsu, is they have like 5 different articles about every game. I'll watch this trailer and see if I can refresh my memory on what it is.
The Brotherhood shall prevail.
Let's see, I'm seeing
Happy
a 3D pink-haired older girl. I guess she's an anime girl, but she's certainly not in the moe category. She's taller and older looking. And she's just talking to the screen, introducing this screen. I guess since I won now, I'm gonna just stick with this. Now it's showing me a kind of trailer video that's just all tease. So I don't know if this is a horror game. It kind of feels like it is.
None can escape my fury.
Let the hunt begin.
What is this game? Trying to figure out what AI in the Sumner Files is. Says, in the near future Tokyo, Detective Konami Date is on the case of a mysterious serial killer. Date must investigate crime scenes as well as the dreams on the hunt for clues. From the mind of Kotaro Uchikoshi, from the Zero Escape series director. with the character designer Yusuke Kozaki from the No More Heroes and Fire Emblem series is a thrilling neo-noir detective adventure story about to unfold. Okay, that sounds interesting. So, you know, there's a release date there and an English website, so Spike Chunsoft is trying to publish. Let's see. Let's just end the turn there. Next, Gematsu. I'm going to try and go through all this news pretty fast because we're going to run out of daily quests pretty quickly today, I imagine. The Nikkei says a less expensive Switch model is due out this fall. It is reportedly going to be more focused on portability. I haven't seen any pictures so far of what it might look like, or if it's really going to change in its appearance at all. Yeah, reportedly designed for portable use, but still dockable and playable on television sets too. Which, like, I don't know how you really are changing much in that scenario. It would just be that if you attached the Joy-Cons to the side of the Switch screen, it would save you a little bit of money, or if you made the screen smaller, it would save you a little bit of money, but that's about all you could do. And you really can't attach the Joy-Cons without losing a lot of the Wii motion actions that are built into the Joy-Cons and needed for a lot of the games that exist. And the only other thing I heard is maybe they would get rid of the HD rumble feature that's built into the Joy-Cons. So unless just everything is smaller, and everything being smaller might save a little bit of money, but that's kind of it. Unless it has less RAM or has a weaker graphics card or video or CPU, which that would be crazy to have two different systems to support. Even if the screen itself was smaller in a new Wii, in a new Switch, it would still have to be at the same resolution. So it could be a 5-inch screen instead of, say, a 7-inch screen. I have no idea what the size of a Switch screen is right now, but you could do that, but it still has to be the same resolution, and that only is going to minimally decrease the value, not by much. Next, Gematsu has an article here. Dragonstar Varnier launches on June 11th in North America and June 14th in Europe. I believe there was some kind of event in Japan, so we've got a decent amount of Japanese games that have been announced. So we're going to see a lot of Gematsu articles today. There's also a decent amount of of Japanese PC games that came out. This one's from Idea Factory as a battle system trailer. It's rated T for teen for blood, language, partial nudity, and violence. I'm in this weird position, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, where because my channel is not monetized, I mean, theoretically you're supposed to try to make your channel family friendly in the hopes that when it gets reviewed for monetization, it doesn't get rejected. But if an occasional non-family friendly thing gets put out on my channel, and particularly if it's a visual element that I could censor out, because I'm not really gonna go and edit out the cuss horde or anything. I don't think YouTube cares about that. In particular, there's one scene in Lords of Shadow 2 where a demon is topless, female looking boobs, with nipples. There's a lot of statues with boobs in the game without nipples, and the harpies don't have nipples. So, like, in theory, I should go in there and censor that, but I don't think I'm gonna bother to get around to it, frankly. Like, the game is rated M for mature anyways. My channel, for the most part, is for people who are mature enough. Like, I don't think anybody, a mature 16-year-old is fine to be on my channel, or older, but I'm certainly not making videos for 2-year-olds, and never claimed that I was. And let's face it, even if a 2-year-old did see the one scene I'm thinking about, it's not really a big deal. There we go. Let's take this victory. So, this game, Dragon Star Veneer, is an JRPG game. It looks like a standard JRPG game, although oddly, it seems like a lot of people are floating in the air fighting maybe giant dragons. Doesn't look like there's anything incredibly special about it, though, otherwise. So yeah, another JRPG announced. No big surprise there. We're at rank 13. GameIndustry.biz has an article here. Finnish games industry employed over 3,000 employees, brought in over $2 billion in 2018. Employment shows steady increase over the last 2 years, though the number of companies is dropping. That's a small number, 3,000 employees in total, compared to, I believe it was just a few days ago, we got a number that the UK employs 14,000 employees. Unfortunately, the UK university system is graduating about 2,000 new students who want to be in the video game industry, so basically 10% of the entire UK video game programming industry would have to leave that industry, be fired or retire every year to make up the difference for the people who want to enter it. And inherently, that's the problem with the video game industry in general, is that there's too many people and too many universities offering degrees for people who want to make video games, but they're not getting the education that they really would need, which is you're gonna have to figure out how to run your own business and do it solo, because nobody's gonna hire you. Or in general, you're gonna actually be better off having a computer science degree that can go into many different industries instead of just video game. A lot of computer programmers would be better off making accounting software for a corporation, getting paid very well, getting treated a lot better, and then on their side time, when they have free moments and for a hobby, just programming their own indie game themselves. Like, when I was in school, there was this feeling and this lie that every single job was going to involve computer programming, and your kid better be computer literate, because if they aren't, they're going to be the janitors. And in the end, by the time I had graduated from school, you were more likely to be hired as a janitor than as a computer programmer. I mean, there are jobs out there, but certainly not every job requires you to know the deep internal workings of computer programming. Plenty of people work at jobs like McDonald's, where they're touching a touch screen and they know that much, and they pick that up just by general understanding and use of the devices. Let's see if there's anything else in this article worth mentioning. It, in my mind, is probably a hopefully hopeful thing and good thing that more European countries are expanding the number of video games that come from those cultures. Let's face it, a lot of video games come from either a Western, kind of United States centric perspective, or they come from a very Eastern, mostly Japanese centric perspective. Very rarely do we get Eastern European bloc fairy tales or mentality. Daedalic makes point and click adventure games, and they're a German company, and their German culture, their German personalities, their German mentality does do something significantly different to the point and click series like Deponia that they released, compared to what a point and click series from the United States would be. And point and clicks in particular have been very prevalent around the European countries, and you get big differences between a point and click made from a UK company versus a French company versus a Finnish company. And CD Projekt Red in particular is a kind of great example of a company that really made an amazing game in The Witcher 3, and The Witcher 2 is pretty good too. I wouldn't really go that as far as to say The Witcher 1 is great, and the only way that The Witcher series would have been made was because The Witcher series was written by an author from that country. And yeah, so let's see, what do we want? Let's just do this. And then this. And then this. And then this. Let's go attack here, here, and here. And then the turn. Now, I did go through all of the games that were left over last Wednesday, and I closed some games that I pretty much would have said the same old, that they were just low effort, ugly looking games, things that didn't really need consideration. But that's alright, because I'm sure some more low effort garbage games came out over the course of the 2 days, so we'll still get to see some of them. Not that I care to see any of them. I just don't want to go anywhere close to feeling like I'm just lowering the number of games I'm looking at and talking about to the point of what the co-optional podcast eventually ended up doing, where they went from they may never have been actually talking about all games coming out on Steam, but then they went from talking about a lot of games that were coming up and coming out of Steam to basically talking about only a select few, to eventually just talking about none of them at all. Ooh, I have not checked the Solo Adventure. Good thing I checked it. The Solo Adventure might come out Tuesday, so we might have some special stream things we do that on Tuesday, either this Tuesday or next Tuesday. But see, we're already done with the Americas account. First game we have on Steam here is called Endless Hell. It looks like it's a Dark Souls clone, and it doesn't look like it is so bad that it doesn't deserve a follow. This actually looks like a game. It actually looks like it might be playable. It's $1.12 discounted, so it might be really small or play really badly. It's an English and simplified Chinese game, so it might be a cheap Chinese Dark Souls game. It says, at present, the game has 3 levels and dozens of monsters and bosses
Hello,
with
friend. It's
each
a
with
terrific
different
night to
behaviors.
cause some trouble.
There are more levels and monsters to update, so look forward to it. So this feels like it's an unfinished thing, but I guess I'm gonna be generous and put it on the fall list, and maybe by the time I get around to looking at the fall list, maybe it will actually be a finished project. Okay, we need to play priest class cards. So, priest, rank 18, let's do this. Next we have a game on Steam called The Elemental Heart, which looks like it is just an asset flip game in an RPG matter. Look, very ugly interface here, taking up a large portion of the screen for no reason. Yeah, this looks terrible. $16.19 discounted, and this is a English and Italian game. That's odd. I don't know if I can say this right, but there was a series of very cheaply made movies that I believe were Italian movies. And let's face it, there's been a series of cheaply made niche movies by a lot of different nationalities of directors. So it seems like that is a theme that comes up over and over again in the movie, like extreme low budget movies. That has really never been something that has been successful, or probably ever would be successful in video games. Like, you can make an indie game that's slightly low budget, but not extremely low budget. There is still, if you were making a game and you're not doing it 100% by yourself and thus not paying yourself, you're probably gonna spend at least, I would say, $20,000 in the development of a video game, even if it's a small indie game, because very few people are going to be able to do the programming, the art, the sound effects, and end up with a good product. Where if you wanted to make an extremely low budget movie that's good quality, you could do something like the Blair Witch Project and just have 3 of your friends and some cameras, some handheld cameras, and make a film that way. Attack for health. Yeah, I can't imagine that you could make that good of a game. Like maybe 10 million and You Must Build a Boat is kind of a good example of a probably extremely low budget game that comes out alright. But with the world of Kickstarter, there's always there's always a way to get people to fund your game. There was a story, and I said I didn't have enough information about it to talk about it, and I've gotten a little bit more information, and it seems like both sides are pretty entrenched. So there's this guy named Tim Pool who I recognize because he was the guy that showed up on the Joe Rogan podcast the second time that the CEO of Twitter came on. The guy that was really going to push and question them about Twitter's like kind of single-sided ideological censoring of people, and so he came on. He did a pretty decent job. It didn't really change anything because I think The employees at Twitter under the CEO in particular are very much entrenched into the ideology, and they're not going to change anything. They'd rather revolt and drag Twitter down into the garbage, which is basically what's happening. Anyways, Tim Pool has been trying to have this channel that uses the name Subverse as the description, as the title of his YouTube channel, as a description kind of like Vice Media. And he wants it to not just be a YouTube channel, but eventually be its own website, or he may already have its own website, where he publishes articles. His brother, allegedly, according to Tim Pool, has been working on a Subverse related game, video game, and so that is also something to keep in mind when hearing this story. So there was this Kickstarter game for an adult game, which I imagine has a pretty large fan base, if I was to guess, and people who are super excited about the Subverse game. So the Subverse, as it stands, is Subverse, the video game, is being made by this, I believe, British company, and it's like an adult sex game where it's kind of a merging of submissive fetish and universe. It looks like a fine adult game. There's nothing really wrong with it. But there was a bit of a conflict there, and it was irritating Tim Pool. Tim Pool, according to him, and then all the information I got was from an interview from Tim Pool after the fact, when he had kind of calmed down. Apparently he had done a highly spirited kind of ramble video originally. He contacted the creators of Subverse and said, can we work out this, because I have a trademark here, although he hadn't registered the trademarks in legal theory exist as soon as you use them, if they're valid trademarks, and that there's a big if there. But he definitely felt like, and was hearing, that there was confusion where it looked like his YouTube channel had just kickstarted this game. So he tried to contact them, and they said, come to us with a lawyer, have your lawyer contact us, basically. He tried to contact them again, and they said, have your lawyer contact us. So now, at that point, he contacted the lawyer, I believe, and filed the registration of the trademark, and was just, from his description, trying to do the things that you have to do to maintain a trademark. Now, I'll throw in a speculation here. At some point, when the lawyer actually, Tim Pool's lawyer actually did contact the company making Subverse, Subverse, somewhere on their Kickstarter page or somewhere else, started to complain and claim that they were being censored or being attacked by Tim Pool, and that sent the rabid fans of the Subverse video game after Tim Pool. So now, very much as it is, it seems like both people on both sides are upset. And this is a video game story only because an adult game is in. It is also worth mentioning that before all of these events, Subverse had already been kicked off Patreon And so there's been about 3 people now that have just been ideologically kicked off Patreon without actually violating any of the rules of Patreon, it seems. So that's yet another thing to keep in mind. So the games of the creators of the Subverse universe, which is a company I think called FOV something, FOV Studios, or something like that. This is all from the top of my head. The ironic thing here is, unless the creators of the Subverse video game just dig in their heels and demand that this goes to court, this almost certainly could have been settled and should have been settled quietly with none of this coming out loud, had they simply said, okay, let's talk about this, or instead of just have your lawyer contact us. Like anytime Tim Pool was saying in his interview, anytime I've heard that somebody says, let's involve the lawyers, that's the end of a conversation and the beginning of the lawyers talking it out. There were a lot of fans of the Subverse games asking Tim Pool, why don't you just change your name? Why don't you just change his name? And he's like, my YouTube channel says the Subverse in every single video. I'd have to go back and edit every single video. This is they'd also say, well, other people have used Subverse and you haven't gone after them, and he's like, well, this is the first I've heard of that. So he very well may be moving forward to strengthen it. It seems like Tim Pool is right in the middle of trying to get funding and going semi-public with his Subverse brand, and that might have opened the door to a lot of research and investigation that hadn't been done up until that point. Meanwhile, the games of the creators of the Subverse video game are getting their public funding from Kickstarter, so they didn't probably do enough research. And since the creators of the Subverse video game are in the UK and they have the trademark in the UK, it really would probably just come down to Subverse being under a different title in the United States, and that would be that. And it could still almost certainly call itself Subverse in the rest of the world, where Tim Pool's YouTube channel probably doesn't have as much of a trademark claim and wouldn't really care about it. At least that's what he was saying in the interview, and what I got from what he was saying in the interview. It's trademark conflicts are going to be boring. Certainly, there's really no way that this comes out and sounds even as exciting as I'm describing it now. It is just going to be a long, drawn-out court case if it gets to that for something that doesn't matter. Arguably, yes, Tim Pool should call himself Subverse Media, and instead of just Subverse, which I'm sure in the same way that Vice might be actually called Vice Media or Vice Communications or something else, and just goes by Vice for short as a trademark, though that almost doesn't matter, because then you would want both a copyright and a trademark for Vice Media and or Subverse and Subverse Media. If you can get it, you're going to try and get as many trademarks that you're actually going to use or potentially use in the near future. Subverse as a video game is not a a great name for a video game either. Like, I think it's a yeah, it's kind of a low effort adult name, in the same way that we see so many games on Steam that are just like hentai puzzle. It's like that's just a descriptor, not really a name. So if they had just created one fantasy word, let's say say Gryffindor, to make a very unimaginative title, and this universe was in the Empire of Gryffindor for the Subverse game, then that would have been more than just describing your game.
I wonder.
Let's see. The whole thing, frankly, comes off just feeling like a scenario if you had two friends that were fighting each other and you just kind of wished that they would just sit down and get around and get along, but you really can't convince either one of them to do that. In a way, it's almost not news. It is news because it's something that happened and might be interesting to people, but in another way, it's like, oh, this is two private parties just fighting publicly for no reason. It's like your trashy neighbors that, unfortunately, I have had trashy neighbors in the past that that like fight with each other, and they're fighting with each other outside of their own house, or they're screaming so loud you can hear them through the walls of their house and potentially the walls of your house. It's just like, this is not good for anybody. It really isn't. Moving on though, we have a game on Steam here called Desert Kill, which is just a low effort Roblox looking game, and every single screenshot shows it from a top down perspective, but the trailer that I saw was showing more of a forward perspective. This is early access for $9.99. Yeah. Same old assets getting just resold over and over again.
Is someone injured?
Let's see. Let's go ahead and draw some more cards. Alright, let's go ahead and play this. And then attack here.
Right away.
And then in the turn. The Tim Pool filed this trademark in a category. It is worth mentioning. It seems like the category that you file in the trademark office for electronic media seems to also cover video games. So I think it was category 21 that seemed to kind of be very all-encompassing. I don't know how the trademark filing office's paperwork works, but it seems like yeah, it's not probably specific enough, because two different companies can have a trademark in two different industries, but and not be conflicting unless there is causing market confusion. It's trademarks are one of the weird places where buyer beware does not apply, apparently, because otherwise it would just be pure capitalism, and every drink could label itself as Coca-Cola or Pepsi, and it would just be up to the buyer to do a ridiculous amount of research to see if this is knockoff Coca-Cola or the real Coca-Cola. Arguably, buyer beware is a stupid mentality. Anyways, moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Kickstarter's games category surpasses $1 billion in pledges. The bigger number I think would be to take from this, as I'm just going to read the title since there's really only 5 sentences in this article anyways, is how many of those Kickstarted games actually have delivered a product that is of quality. Because let's face it, a lot of Kickstarters disappear, never deliver. A lot of Kickstarters end up giving you a much lower quality game than what you expect. 2 great examples are Agony was Kickstarted, and Agony Unrated, not really a satisfactory quality product, and We Happy Few was Kickstarted, and while there's a lot of reasons why We Happy Few failed as a game, one of the major things is the fact that it was Kickstarted, so they were given money to make a game that they wanted to make instead of being funded by a publisher who could say, no, we've got the market research, and what you're trying to make, this survival game that they were trying to make, is not going to sell enough for the quality of game you're trying to make it be. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article here. Tricolor Love Story for the PS4 launches August 29th in Japan. It will become interesting. This is, of course, a romance visual novel. If we start seeing censorship happen in the Japanese games released in Japan specifically, that would certainly be an issue. There is this concept called reverse importation, where because Japanese laws have mandatory levels of censorship, like you can't show any genitalia without blurring and such, that there is this idea in which Japanese consumers will import the American version or use a patch or something. Reverse importation often happens also because in anime in particular, the Blu-ray for the Japanese version of the Blu-ray might cost $100 for one episode, whereas in America you could get a Blu-ray that has at least 4 episodes on it, and it's only $30. So there's a lot of reverse importing happening there because of that.
Is someone injured?
So if Sony of Japan is trying to pull something, which I doubt this is the case, but if they were trying to pull a trick where the Japanese versions of games were more desirable than the American Western versions of games, because the Western versions of games are heavily censored, that I wouldn't put that past them, but that's not my read on the situation. I think we will probably start to see Japanese versions of Japanese only games for the PlayStation be censored also. And not just in the obvious nudity ways too. I think we're going to start seeing them censored in a lot of different ways. Swap a minion's attack and health. No, not ready to do that. There we go. Let's see. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here. The Ninja Warriors once again launches for the PS4 Switch in July of Japan. I don't even know if I've seen what this game is. Looks like it's kind of a old school beat 'em up arcade game. If it's called the Ninja Warriors once again, it must be something that is a improvement on an older game, I guess. It says, in addition to the 3 characters that were playable in the Super Famicom version, so it was a Super Famicom, so maybe it never came to the West, so never a Super NES game. Interesting. Yeah. If the Ninja Warriors never came to the West, came out in '87 apparently. If it never came out to the West, there is probably a good chance that it will. Let's see.
Right away.
There you go. Very rarely does that work. Trying to get win streaks here. And we got a few more priest cards we need to play. So yeah, okay. Maybe the Ninja Warriors once again will come out. Maybe it won't. Gamatsu has an article here. Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet version 1.7.0 update is now available. As new online co-op quests, costumes, weapons, and more. Generally speaking, I don't talk about updated versions of games, but I am kind of trying to keep an eye out for the Sword Art Online series. By the time I got around to actually playing, thinking about playing it, I imagine Sword Art Online will not be popular anymore. It's available now for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC, and is due out for the Switch in the summer. The Switch release of older games as it's catching up does certainly change how I look at a lot of releases of games. I start to think, well, there's more of a reason to play this slightly older game on PC because now there's a Switch version that's about to come out. So that's slightly interesting. Next we have a game on Steam called Argonaut's Agency for Pandora's Box. This is from a developer or publisher who makes a bunch of these city management, resource management games. They seem to make a decent amount of them. They never look terrible, but they never look good enough to play either. $3.59 discounted. Yeah, so if you ever look up Warcraft 7, we can just show it off. There's a large number of Argonauts based games, and most of them are rated positively too. So yeah, not terrible, but game. I'm trying to play here. Having a little bit of internet trouble. Obviously. Okay, moving on. We'll try that again.
Right away.
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle for Arcade launches April 25th in Japan. By a PC game coming out in arcades, even in just Japan. That means that Blaze Blue as a fighting game series, as a 2D anime fighting game series, is gaining traction and more people are interested in it. So this helps me, at least in a small part, recognize that, okay, this is potentially a contender for for games that are fighting games as far as what I'd want to play. And I think BlazBlue, there's a lot of BlazBlue games, but Cross Tag Battle in particular seems to be a pretty decent fighting game on the face of it. So if I can ever get around to playing a fighting game. The irony almost certainly is that if I did play a fighting game, it would probably end up being a huge mistake, because I'd probably be really bad at them. But I guess that's the whole point, is that
My hand is too full.
if I never get into trying to play them, I'll never get any better at them. Alright. So what I want to do is play this, and do this. And then I would like to get this on the field next turn before this dies. That way when this dies, it'll do 5 damage to him. Next we have a game on Steam called Paradox Vector, which was a vector-based Doom-looking first-person shooter. This does not look visually interesting. Vector graphics were interesting in about one game, and one game only when they first came out, and have just looked horrible since, at least to my eye. This game is $2.99 with no discount. Alright. This. And let's see. Can I do anything? I could double the health here. This guy is trying everything possible to defeat. There we go. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam over here called Knocked Hidden Arrow. It looks like it might be a VR dungeon crawler game. Mostly looks like an asset flip and suffering from dark screenshot syndrome. I will say wherever they found these troll assets, these trolls look pretty good. $9.99 though, with no discount. Yeah. You could possibly make a dungeon crawler where you were on rails and all you were really doing is controlling the angle and direction that you were firing your arrow at. Suppose that would work. Moving on, that game I'm not going to put on the fall list. We have a game here called Pagan Online with mixed reviews already, so it's probably a free-to-play game. It says it's a hack and slash game. Yeah, early access, $29.99, not free-to-play. Third-party EULA and wargaming.net account. Let's see if we can see some negative reviews. Let's see. Too long, didn't read up front. WSASD is a problem. Character can't move and attack. It's one or the other. And the skills don't combo. Wait. I also agree with the assessment that it was built for some mobile platform, seeing as it didn't scale well to my screen. So yeah, this seems like this is they're saying it's a cell phone port. I can't immediately see that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Let's see. There we go. So yeah, with mixed reviews, I think I can skip Pagan Online. Also, it's an online game, so it's like an MMO. Looking at the other games, wargaming.net has put out, some of them are positive, some of them are mixed. They did a lot of the Masters of Orion series. Yeah, doesn't really seem like any of the games that wargaming.net put out are really in the style of games that I would want to play. Okay. How can we do this? GameIndustry.biz has an article here. Actor Will Smith joins $46 million investment into an esports organization, Jinji. Smith joined by investment partner and Japanese star Keisuke Honda. So it's probably going to be more and more cases of rich people investing in esports teams just because I know Will Smith's son in particular seems to be crazy, like your standard California crazy rich kid that is getting everything he wants. Like he had an anime made after him, he got in movies he shouldn't have been allowed to be in. I also know that Will Smith, at least at some point, was into Scientology very high. Not as high as Tom Cruise, but maybe a little bit lower than that. And so when you're very, very high in the Scientology group, then they tend to support you. And which made it very weird that Will Smith was trying to come to YouTube. He certainly seems like he bounces all over the place. Druid or Rogue is what I need to play now, and he's not like very consistently just focusing on his acting career, which let's face it, there's not a lot to his acting other than action movies. Like he's never tried to expand out other than being an action hero. Tom Cruise, I think the same criticism could be made to him for him. You eventually, well, unfortunately almost, you'll find that there are a large number of people that are famous for being famous, and you kind of wish you didn't know who they were at all, because they're just like not really people that really matter, that you would want to follow or be interested in otherwise. Sitting back and being an investor in an esports organization, as long as he's not trying to get his son into esports, into the esports group, this might be something that is less objectionable, frankly. I mean, if he's just an investor and he's not showing up at every competition or at every broadcast, if he's not trying to be the life of the party. The problem with the YouTube Rewind in particular is that Will Smith was the very first person you see and very possibly the last person you see in that YouTube rewind. And he hadn't, up until that point, I think, made any YouTube videos. So like, it was very, very insulting. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Elon Musk Road to Respect, which is a troll game in the form of a platformer, just kind of memeing on Elon Musk. I don't even know if they're really trying to make fun of him. Elon Musk always strikes me as somebody who is probably on the autistic spectrum and seems to
What shall we
suffer in part because of that.
Nuts to you.
Next we have a game on Steam called 7 Bullets Zombie Apocalypse, which looks like it's a low effort infinite runner, shooter, jumper, zombie game. Infinite runner, I guess, would be the best descriptor for it. It's tagged as an action game. There's nothing here that looks interesting, though.
Put this apple on your head.
Squirrel.
Got one.
GameIndustry.biz has an article here. Sony promises, quote, appealing price for the new PlayStation console. Wild releases more interview material after the hardware's high-spec prompt speculation over the price. I would not be surprised if price does play a factor, because it should always play a factor in the release of any new consoles. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if there was a case here where the game itself, well, no, not games. Let's see.
Where my trees at?
Let's see. I'll take that. There we go. And so this will die. And then I'll just do this.
Time waits for no one.
Hey, catch!
There we go. That worked really, really well. Unless he can do a full board clear. Yeah. If the PlayStation 5 comes out and it's $400 for the base unit, that's a problem. I would like to see $250 units come out as a base cheap unit at minimum, well, at least $250, if not cheaper, come out for both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox 2. I feel like this generation in particular has been particularly expensive. Maybe I'm just getting old and haven't realized inflation has happened. Almost certainly that is a factor, but it does feel like the PS4 and the Xbox One have been particularly expensive things.
Hey, catch!
Let's see.
Can't win them all.
I think I just won there. Even the Switch seems a little expensive, and it's been rather hard to justify finding even a refurbished model for the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4. So as somebody who moved over to PC gaming, like the thought certainly is there, at the very least, if you got an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, you'd have a more improved Blu-ray player to play Blu-ray video movies. But that's just kind of not worth the money. There we go. So we're done with the European account. Let's move over to the Asian account. If we get all of these daily quests done, we will just work our way into a we'll just go back to the main account and play ranked and try to get up higher in ranked, I suppose. But we should try to get all the news done today. In fact, since I am now done with Castlevania and I'm just going to be doing scheduling, I should break up this episode too. I've noticed Hearthstone has started to load a lot slower in this section. It just kind of doesn't want to do anything, and you have to sometimes click it, but even here I'm clicking it and it's just not going anywhere or doing anything just to get to the main menu. That's one of the problems with Destiny Child, is it takes forever to load into the main menu for just a bad reason. Let's see if we can challenge a friend. See what this guy's doing in the Tavern Brawl.
Lazul versus Mayev.
Seems like he just started.
None can escape my fury. I foresaw this encounter.
So let's watch this game, and then that'll give me an excuse to take a break to watch this guy play a Tavern Brawl while we cover the news. Let's see, Gamatsu has an article, Cavern Stories for the PS4 is coming to North America in July. You can play it now in English on the Japanese and Asia servers. It's an RPG game. Okay. I doubt Cavern Stories is going to be a huge success, but it probably will get a decent number of people to play. This game is kind of surprising. It came out with no announcement really at all. The Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth has been released on Steam as a board game turned into a digital game. And I guess that's why it probably doesn't have a lot of advertisement around it, but you would have thought it would have had something. The Lord of the Rings is a kind of big series. This is free to play, and it doesn't even seem like it has in-game purchases, so I don't know what you do.
How much is this worth to you?
It seems like this isn't even actually a game. It says, to play Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth, one player must download the free Journeys in Middle-earth app on a compatible device. The app determines the challenges and content that the heroes encounter during the game, and from tile and token placement to enemy behavior. The app also lets heroes save their campaign, allowing them to complete over the course of several gaming sessions. This makes it feel like this is a assistant app for a actual board game. Let's see. Wish I noticed you needed the board game to play this, but besides that, I would use this if I had the board game recommended. So, it is some weird assistant app. Well, I guess that explains why it's free to play and doesn't have any monetization in it, is because it's just an assistant app. I guess we might start to see more of that happen over time, where we have more and more board games like old school Hasbro games with assistant apps. Monopoly would probably work pretty well with an app running in the side by side. playing some music, saying some sound effects, rolling the dice for you. We've seen a lot of board games come with gadgets, cheap plastic electronic components that frankly could just be done better in a cell phone app. Although it would be very unlikely somebody's playing a board game and they have a PC right next to them, but maybe a laptop. That makes sense. Moving on, Kimetsu has an article. Root Letter Last Answer has been rated in Australia. P-Cube is seemingly localizing a live-action remake for the, I think it's a horror visual novel called Root Letter. The game, a remake of Root Letter with live-action scenes, first launched on the PS4, Switch, and Vita in December 2018 in Japan. A Western release has yet to be officially announced. So, maybe this is more of a case of localization, getting away from the anime characters that would have originally been in the game and making it more live action for a Western world. I could see how Japan in particular would think that might be successful. Frankly, it's probably not worth the effort. And if a Japanese company is doing live action, then they're just going to have Japanese actors, which kind of still is hard to relate to for some players. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Courier of the Crypts, which seems like it's a dark screenshot syndrome pixel graphics. I haven't had to really complain about pixel graphics games in a while. Looks like a roguelike for $19.99. I don't think that's something I wanna deal with. Standard duel. Please accept the standard duel. He disappeared. The guy disappeared. So should I cancel and challenge the other person? So the other person just went back into a tavern brawl. This guy now, we're just gonna sit here and they're never gonna respond. Courier of Crypts doesn't look interesting to me, so yeah, it's not gonna make it to the follow list. GameIndustry.biz has an article as we're waiting here. Streamlabs says Twitch is still streaming king, though YouTube is gaining ground. YouTube reaches 24% of Twitch's total streaming viewership following its merger of YouTube Gaming with YouTube Live. Of course, Streamlabs in particular is mostly used by YouTubers and Twitch streamers who don't want to give money to Twitch and YouTube and give a cut. So they're in a weird position to be making any accurate bits of statistics or anything like that. Now, here's the question to ask is, are they going and removing all the streaming out of Twitch that isn't games? Are they going and removing all the streaming on YouTube that isn't video games? Or is this just Twitch has more live streaming than all of YouTube in general? Maybe that is the case. Live streaming still really isn't that popular or well promoted on YouTube. So that could be the case. In the end, there's can be statistics that don't tell the real story, because you are from my perspective, it seems like there is a 0.01% of Twitch streamers that are making the vast majority of money. It feels like probably only 10% of all Twitch streamers are making any money at all. Maybe that is a better percentage than YouTube. And it's certainly probably a problem in both YouTube and Twitch, but it seems to be slightly more encouraged by Twitch than YouTube. I think there might just be more random people in general that are watching people on YouTube compared to Twitch. So the viewer base may not be there, even if it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. The main problem with Twitch for me is I can't easily and quickly get videos uploaded to Twitch that I've uploaded to YouTube, and videos that are uploaded to Twitch as pre-recorded footage, which is a vast majority of the content I make, are not promoted in any way, and I'm not even 100% sure if they're saved after a certain time or amount. So while I tried through an automated service that has since shut down to automatically transfer all my videos to Twitch, it in no way got me anywhere close to the number of views I've gotten for those same videos on YouTube. And so that's definitely a problem. Here we have a game on Steam called Power Beats VR, which is just Beat Saber, just a clone of Beat Saber in early access for $15.99. So of course that's not going to go to the fall list. So we have on the Asian account a challenge a friend and win 3 games with Druid and Hunter, which means we're going to have to probably friend some random people and try to get challenge a friend done, or do something else. We've been going an hour and 30 minutes, so this is a good point to break up this recording and make another episode. So as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.